Speech Act Theory, Accomplishing Things with Words, and the Cooperative Principle, Successfully Exchanging Information. Pages 238 through 249. By Courtney Coles, Megan Brown, Dory Gray, and Riley Wood. Speech Act Theory works from the premise that language performs actions when we speak. We are doing things, not just talking about them. Speaking actually changes the status of the world around us. For example, when two people get married, they are now a legal couple and were two people before the minister married them. Speech Act theory originated in philosophy in the works of J.L. Austin and John Searle. The book How to Do Things with Words states Austin's argument that all utterances perform speech acts, which are parallel to other forms of actions. Searle worked off of J.L. Austin and extended on his beliefs of speech act. Searle's book, Speech Acts, differs a bit from Austin's, but they have many similarities. There are three components. First, the locutionary act. Second, the illocutionary act. And third, the perlocutionary act. First, the locutionary act is the production of the sound and word that make up an utterance and its referential meaning. An example is, dang, I forgot to go to the bank machine. Second, the illocutionary act is the extended meaning of the utterance, or the conventional force that an utterance is understood to have. An example would be, please lend me some cash so I can buy a ticket because I do not have enough cash because I forgot to go to the bank machine where I could get cash. And third, the perlocutionary act is the effect achieved by an utterance on the hearer. An example of this would be, your friend thinks that because you forgot to go to the bank machine, you do not have enough money to buy the ticket, so she offers to lend you $10. The speech act cannot be complete until someone receives and interprets the utterance. There are 6 subcategories of the illocutionary act. First, the representatives or assertives represent a state of affair. The directives are designed to get the addressee to do something. The commissives are designed to get the speaker to do something. The expressives are to express the mental state of the speaker. The declarations bring about the state of affairs to which they refer, and the verdicts pass judgment. Aside from types and categories are the actions of the speech act. The direct speech act is when the form of the locutionary act corresponds directly with the illocutionary act. The indirect speech act involves intended meanings different from the locutionary act, or the literal meaning of the words. An example of these two types is as follows. Do we have any milk? That's an indirect speech act. Get me some milk, please. This is a direct speech act. J.L. Austin coined the term performative within the performative speech acts, which are utterances that accomplish the acts they describe just by being uttered. An example of the performative speech acts would be, I request that you stop jumping on the bed, or I tell you I have seen this before. There are the performative speech acts that employ first-person subject, such as I and we. And then there are those that employ present tense verbs that describe the speech act. Within the performative speech acts, there are 2 conditions. Condition 1. These are utterances that can be evaluated as true or false, and they are called constative speech acts. As a side note, it is not logical to ask whether or not the statement is true. The question that should be asked, whether or not they successfully accomplish their purpose. The second condition, felicity conditions, Determine whether or not a performative speech act or any illocutionary act is successful. Within this condition are specific outline conditions that Serial created to help recognize the condition. Within this condition are specific outline conditions that Serial created to help recognize the condition. The conditions are as follows with the example of you promising that you will make dinner for him tonight. You must say to your roommate something like, I promise I will make you dinner tonight. You must believe your roommate would like to make dinner, and your roommate must actually want this. It must be obvious that you would not normally cook dinner for him. You must truly intend to make dinner and be willing to be obligated to making dinner. The last process of the speech act theory is the evaluation of it. A systematic account of meaning must be presented about the level of utterance. Austin's early vision of speech theory wasn't fully successful. In 1971, P.F. Staunton objected that the relations Austin proposed among locution, illocution, and perlocution, and especially the range of illocutionary acts, have little to do with the way people speak most of the time in conversation. Herefore, speech acts, as Austin described them, could play only a limited role in the communicative aspect of language. The cooperative principle. In order to exchange information successfully, speakers must cooperate in creating meaningful utterances and in working to interpret other people's utterances. British philosopher H.P. Grice describes the cooperative principle as make your conversational contribution, such as is required, at the stage for which it occurs, by the accepted purpose or direction of the talk exchange in which you are engaged. Conversational maxims. Grice proposed 4 categories of maxims that were critical from the perspective of the speaker. Maxims of quantity. Number 1. Make your contribution as informative as required. Number 2. Do not make your contribution more informative than is required. Maxims of quality. Number 1. Do not say what you believe to be false. Number 2. Do not say that for which you lack adequate evidence. Maxim of relation. Number 1. Be relevant. Maxims of manner. Number 1. Avoid obscurity of expression. Number 2. Avoid ambiguity. Number 3. Be brief. Number 4. Be orderly. Speakers violate these maxims all the time. If a friend asks you what you did last night and you said, I washed my hair and watched some TV. If these were your only 2 primary activities for that night, then you would be following the maxims. But if the other person said, I saw you at the movies, then you left out valuable information, which at this time you did not follow the maxims. Controversial implications. Grice also used a term, controversial implications, to describe the way an utterance can carry implied meaning in a particular conversation. Controversial implication works if the implied meaning somehow belongs in the conversation. Being a cooperative participant in conversation also means responding to the culturally understood illocutionary force. Relevance helps discourse, whether spoken or written, to cohere. In any conversation, we assume that anything any party says is relevant to the conversation. Consider the following conversation. What are we having for dinner? Michael, Paul just pulled in. Jenny, I was hoping that you'd make macaroni and cheese. Michael, did you replace the light bulb in the hall? Michael's response is irrelevant to Jenny's conversation. Now consider this scenario. Monique says, I'm in the mood for some milk. Gary says, I think there's some in the fridge. Monique says, are you getting up? Her husband getting up has nothing to do with Monique's desire for milk. But because we assume optimal relevance in discourse, her husband will understand the implicit request that he needs to bring her some milk. Relevance is partly a cognitive matter. What we hear in conversation must fit into conceptual frames and contexts in order for us to comprehend it. Conversation doesn't always conform to the cooperative principle. For instance, strategic rudeness can be seen as a reflection of pragmatic competence. The question, "What is your point?" can effectively shape the contribution of an interlocutor. Instead of saying that this fails to adhere maxims, we can view it as successfully fulfilling other important social and conversational functions. In conversation, all participants are working to achieve desired ends, from presenting themselves in specific ways to creating or maintaining relationships, from trying to elicit information to trying to persuade others to think or act in certain ways.